It's automatically going to Facebook. I mean YouTube, yeah. I mean, it looks like it's showing on Facebook or on YouTube. It's just delayed. Okay. So I need to mute that then, right? Okay. Okay. I did that. Oh, where do I do that? Oh yeah. And that's where I go to Facebook. Okay, so I'm looking at it on Facebook and it's got just that blue screen. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. I need to hit share and then I need to search for. Oh, group, is it? Yeah, there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay, shared to my group. So now I just go to StreamYard and I do my thing, right? Okay. 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 Okay, so I just go back to StreamYard and we start talking. Okay, so okay, 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 bye. Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's discussion. We're going to talk about why would one want to do keto? Why would one want to eat the keto? Now, typically people want to do keto because they lose weight. And it's a very successful way to lose weight and to maintain weight. But what people often notice, doctors or individuals notice when they do this way of eating, this low carbohydrate way of eating and getting in ketosis, all sorts of other things happen. It isn't just weight loss, but they get reduced inflammation. And of course, inflammation is the root of so many conditions. Anything that has itis on the end of it is inflammatory. So we always think of arthritis, but even skin, dermatitis. Your gallbladder is cholangitis, tendonitis, bursitis. So when you're in ketosis, your inflammation goes down. Now, the driver of it is insulin. So when you're eating too many carbs, your body makes too much insulin, and insulin produces inflammation. It creates weight loss resistance. It creates fluid retention. So it creates blood pressure problems and all the attendant things that go with that. But I do want to note that I'm not giving medical advice or forming a individual relationship with you all. You need to talk to your doctor before you make these type of changes. That said, a ketogenic diet is incredibly safe. And even if you have trouble, getting your healthcare provider to, weigh in and be on board with it, it is a safe thing to do. So we're going to talk about 5 conditions. Those are the 5 major reasons to do a ketogenic diet. Metabolic issues that are addressed and corrected, and even some of the damage is reversed by a ketogenic diet. These metabolic issues are major contributors to all of these chronic conditions that we see. So we're going to talk about diabetes and prediabetes. We're going to talk about cardiovascular issues and stroke. We're going to talk about cancer. And then the neurodegenerative conditions that are epidemic. I've been in practice 46 years now, and I seldom saw dementia. I seldom saw Parkinsonism. ADHD used to be 1 in 10,000, or autism used to be 1 in 10,000, and now it's in certain populations it's like 1 in 30 or 1 in 40. And also we're going to talk about psychiatric conditions that are rooted in this energy problem and can be addressed by ketogenic dieting. Again, if you're on medications for these conditions, you need to work with your doctor. It isn't like you can just drop the conventional approach and do a ketogenic, but a ketogenic diet will help get to the root of these conditions and may put you in a position where you and your doctor can reduce your medications or even get off them. So the first condition we're going to talk about is diabetes and prediabetes. And it is well known that type 2 diabetes, which is 95% of all diabetes, is reversible almost always. Frequently, it's reversible by a ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is a diet, high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate diet that puts us in ketosis. Now, ketosis is a condition where when our body is burning fat, either our dietary fats or our body fat, it makes ketones. And ketones are a wonderful source of energy for the brain, and for all organ systems. And so when you're in a ketogenic diet and you get in ketosis, your insulin goes down, so you don't have the inflammation, the weight gain, fluid retention, and you get disruption of your mineral, particularly magnesium disruption. But it's well documented that the reason for type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes, which is causing just as much problem as full-blown diabetes. The root cause of it is eating too many carbohydrates, meaning too many sweets and too many starches. And so there are all these medications. There's metformin, now there's Wegovy and these injectable things. There are medications that cause you to excrete more glucose in your urine. In fact, we've had a couple instances recently where we send in a urine test and the lab sends us back this kind of warning, like, wow, this person has like crazy high glucose in their urine. And, they're not full. I mean, usually you don't spill glucose in your urine unless you're really diabetes is way out of control. But here's a medication that causes you to pee out the excess glucose. But I think these conditions should be addressed like any condition by getting to the root cause. And the root cause is our diet. There's all of these hyper palatable foods that are out there. Soda pop, both diet and regular soda pop, fruit juices, all of these sugared, high fructose corn syrup, all of those things. And then the starches, all the potatoes, rice, corn. It's just not the right fuel for our body in that quantity. And so our body tries to deal with it in a variety of ways, and often it is by putting on fat. Well, it's better to be fat than full-blown diabetic, but the condition is ongoing, and it is leading to all of these 5 reasons why we're having this this live tonight, is because it is a major contributor to diabetes, cardiovascular and stroke, to cancer, to neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's, ADHD, and Parkinson's, as well as psychoses. And this is a real interesting recent discover how it is at the root of a lot of psychological conditions. So the next thing we're going to talk about is cardiovascular disease and stroke. Now, there is this huge emphasis on cholesterol and thinking that cholesterol, monitoring cholesterol levels, taking anti-cholesterol drugs and things like that is having a significant impact on reducing heart attacks and stroke. But heart attacks and stroke were very rare around the turn of the last century, around 1900. Those things just were not very common. So what's changed? Well, it's our diet. We eat all of these carbohydrates. We eat all these damaged processed seed oils that disrupt our metabolism. And the plaques that form, that cause, coronary artery blockages are caused by things that damage the lining of the blood vessels. It's not, too much cholesterol circulating. It's something creating a lesion on the wall of the blood vessel. There's like of course you think tobacco smoke, of course, but oxidative stress from elevated glucose is one of the major reasons that causes the lesion. And then the plaque forms to protect you from the message to clot. So when you get cut on your skin, you better clot or you'll bleed. But to get a clot signal on the inside of your blood vessels is like yelling fire in a crowded theater. So your body, when there's a damage to the lining of your blood vessels, your body immediately has to slap a Band-Aid on it, and that is the plaque. And the plaque is made up of cholesterol, but it's also made up of lots of other components, proteins, and there's a lot of polyunsaturated fats that make up the plaques too. But mostly what causes a sudden cardiovascular event like a heart attack is when one of those plaques breaks loose and goes to the narrows in the heart. And the same thing with a stroke. Most strokes are a piece of, like an embolism, a piece of one of these clots or one of these plaques that breaks loose and goes to the brain, and those can be in the carotid arteries, or they can be elsewhere. They can be caused by AFib and arrhythmias and things like that. And of course, arrhythmias are neurologic problems with your heart, and their neurologic problems are contributed to by having, being diabetic, pre-diabetic, having the standard American diet. So next thing we're going to talk about is, in fact, I want to back up a sec to diabetes and pre-diabetes. Many years ago, like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the Atkins diet, which was a ketogenic diet, was successfully used to treat diabetes and pre-diabetes. And there's lots of books out there, reverse pre-diabetes now, those type of books out there that are great. There's a lot of books on cardiovascular, that tend to debunk the overemphasis on reducing cholesterol in the blood, and putting the emphasis where I think it really should be, and that should be on controlling your blood sugar. And of course, the best way to do that is ketogenic diet. Then we're going to talk now about cancer. Now, there's a couple authors that I really think are interesting when we think about cancer. So for years, and when I was in school, we thought cancer was caused by carcinogens. And it is contributed to by heavy metals, by smoke, by environmental industrial pollutants. There are all these things that we look at that are carcinogenic. But in the early 1930s, a fellow named Otto Warburg discovered, he was a German, and he discovered that all cancers, their metabolism is a damaged type of metabolism where they're only burning glucose, or very much primarily burning glucose. It's what's called the Warburg effect, and he got a Nobel Prize for his understanding of cancer. And so rather than cancer being in the nucleus of the cell where the DNA is, because that's kind of what we think, there's a mutation and the cell grows widely and stuff like that. Warburg discovered that no, most of the problems with cancer is out in the cytoplasm, in the mitochondria. It's mitochondrial damage. And one of the best illustrations of this is, you've all heard of a PET scan. Well, a PET scan is, they inject you with radioactive glucose, and because the tumor, an active tumor, sucks up all that glucose because tumors thrive on glucose. They scan you and they can see where there are metastases because there's more radiation where the metastasis is. So the Warburg effect and this whole metabolic theory of cancer is illustrated by the PET scan itself. And there's a great book by a guy named Christofferson called Tripping Over the Truth. It's a really good introduction to the metabolic theory of cancer. And there's a researcher, Tom Seyfried, Seyfried, I think it is. And he's the leading expert on metabolic theory of cancer, and he's an oncologist treating cancer with metabolic therapies. And he's developed what he calls the glucose ketone index, and it's one of the ways that he uses to monitor treatments for cancer. So he's another really good source, Thomas Seyfried, when we're talking about cancer. It's a great adjunct. A ketogenic diet is a great adjunct to cancer treatments. And a little known effect is if you're going to get chemo, fasting, for 24 hours before and after a chemo treatment pretty much eliminates a lot of the nausea or reduces the nausea, and even some cases reduces things like hair loss. And of course, when you're fasting, you go into ketosis. It's one of the powerful, quick ways to get in ketosis is with fasting, and that's why even intermittent fasting, where you only eat 1 or 2 meals a day, where you have longer periods of fasting, your ketone levels will go up, and you'll get all these positive regenerative effects. Okay, then we're going to talk about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ADHD. There are things too like ALS, Lou Gehrig's, autism, things like that. These are brain energy problems. We're trying to think of them. I mean, medically, they're trying to think of them as there's these neurofibrillary tangles in the brain, or the the beta amyloid plaques in the brain. But the people who are using ketogenic diet and metabolic or the energy model for these neurodegenerative conditions have concluded that those tangles and those plaques are like scabs. They're like the result of not having the right energy source in the brain. They're not really the cause of it. So there's all this research going out, and even some recent drugs that have been patented to reduce the plaques, the tangles and the beta amyloid. And they do reduce those, so they look better on imaging, but they don't really treat the condition, the symptoms very well. So it's like, oh, look, your brain scan looks better, but you still, your memory's shot, you have all the Parkinson issues, or etc. So for a number of years, like up to 20 years even, they have been calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. And this is a really interesting way of understanding it. The brain has its own blood sugar regulatory mechanism that is somewhat separate from the systemic blood sugar. So when you're monitoring glucose, with a finger poke or ketones, which I really recommend, there's a great system called Keto Mojo. I did a live on it, but you can just Google Keto Mojo and get their equipment. It's not very expensive, and you can then know what your glucose level is, what your ketones are. You can calculate your glucose ketone index, and you can find out what it takes in the way of diet, exercise, meal spacing, etc., to get into ketosis and get these benefits. But it's really an exciting time because there are all of these researchers, legit mainstream neurologists, who are working with ketogenic diets to halt or reverse these conditions. And I mean, it's like, well, how come all the kids are all nerved up? How come they can't sit still? What's with the ADHD? Well, you look at what they're eating, and it's not surprising. I've seen people put Coca-Cola in the baby bottles. They're eating macaroni and cheese. They're drinking all of these juice boxes, and all the, bread, potato, rice, pastas. It just isn't the right fuel for a rapidly developing brain. You think, well, what is the brain made out of? Especially a child's brain. It's made of these incredible healthy fats. The breast milk is full of DHA, which is one of the omega-3s. A huge percentage of the developing brain is DHA, and cholesterol. Cholesterol is used as an insulator in the brain. Of course, it's a precursor for all your reproductive hormones and steroid hormones, adrenal hormones too. So this cholesterol phobia is another thing that has contributed to these very conditions we're talking about. People not getting enough healthy fat. It's great to eat a high fat, moderate protein, low carb diet and get your blood sugar under control. But it is a way too to get all of these wonderful fats and adequate protein. Lots of people don't get enough protein. There's all this, what I consider bogus fear mongering about red meat, but red meat is like the balanced diet. If you had to pick one food that you had to survive on and thrive on, it would be meat. You certainly can't. You can't thrive on, rice or potatoes or beans or corn or those kind of things. People who do vegetarianism or vegan right, they have to be really careful to get the right combination of foods. So there's one of the authors that I really recommend people is there's two of them. One is Bredesen. He's written a book called The End of Alzheimer's. He's a neurologist out from California. And then there's a really positive book called The Brain's Way of Healing by Norman Doidge, Doidge. And he talks about how these conditions are not necessarily progressive and like not much you can do about them. He's talking about all these other alternative ways of dealing with these conditions. So I really recommend those books. And then the fifth reason that to do keto is, and this is, relatively new concept, to think that you can treat anxiety, depression, psychoses with a ketogenic diet. Now, there's a number of excellent authors out there. One of my favorites is this woman called Georgia Ede. Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind. It's really a well-written book. It's very understandable. She has ways of eating. She's good at differentiating between paleo, keto, and carnivore, and the strengths and weaknesses of each of those approaches to eating. But these psychologists, psychiatrists who are working with ketogenic diet and psychoses, most of them stumble onto it. A lot of the antipsychotic drugs cause major weight gain. And so a number of them will say, well, we can't do much for your bipolar. A lot of these people have serious psychological conditions. They may be, inpatient. They may be in an institution. They're so psychotic. But the doctors will say, well, let's try a ketogenic diet just so you can lose some weight. You might feel better about yourself if you lost some weight. And they often discover that the psychosis goes away. There's a great podcast called Metabolic Mind. There's a family called the Bazuki family, the Bazuki group, who are the benefactors of this research team that's researching the use of ketogenic diet for all these psychoses. And I can't recommend it highly enough, Metabolic Mind. There are all these testimonials by doctors who are using these techniques and patients who've been benefited from them. One I listened to recently was about using ketogenic diet for eating disorders, for bulimia. And it's amazing to think that, these things that we often associate with like Freudianism or behaviorism that are, have to do with family of origin issues, with potty training or breastfeeding or, our dad didn't give us, the right support or, and I'm not saying there's not anything to be said for those, types of analysis, but if you're eating the wrong fuel and your brain has the wrong fuel, not enough of the right fuels, it's going to malfunction. And it isn't just going to be neurodegenerative conditions, but it's going to be, depression. You're not going to be able to see the goodness in life and the beauty and the things to be grateful. Okay. Yeah, they're back with that. So should I pick up from where I was? So I was sorry about the technical difficulties, but I want to go back and continue talking about psychoses. Um, the anxiety, depression, bipolar, those are contributed to, if not even caused by, in many cases, by having the wrong energy for the brain. It's not unlike a seizure. It's been known for 100 years that a ketogenic diet um, treated epilepsy. In fact, it was the accepted treatment for epilepsy before the anti-seizure medications became popular, like Dilantin, and now there's a lot of different anti-seizure meds. And still, they'll use a ketogenic diet. The neurologists will use it for seizures when what they call drug resistant seizures. So they start out trying the drugs, and then if the drugs don't work, then they try a ketogenic diet to to mitigate the seizures. And in many cases, a ketogenic diet will keep the brain from seizing. And like seizures, these conditions, these psychotic conditions, bipolar and clinical anxiety and depression, um, are seizure-like in the sense that the parts of the brain that give you perspective, so things don't seem so blue and things don't seem so dangerous, creating anxiety. You don't get these fluctuations, that they call bipolar, because the brain is getting a nice, steady source of energy. So the brain can make its own glucose, it can control its own glucose levels, but it really thrives and kind of regenerates when you're in a ketogenic state. So it's a really exciting time for these docs who are discovering that a ketogenic approach will be helpful for these conditions. Now, it's great when these are severe psychiatric conditions, if you can find a psychiatrist who will work with you to help you, or have a team, or the nutritionist can help you get into ketosis, and then your psychiatrist can adjust your medications. Some cases get off, some cases reduce medications. So I do recommend strongly going to the Bazuki group, the podcast called Metabolic Mind, and listening to those wonderful doctors who are doing research in this area. And there's lots of really great studies now ongoing. Hi, Kristen. So I don't see any questions or chats or anything, so I'm going to end this. Um, oh, yeah, I just deleted the continued one and came back to the original one. Okay. So if I go to the original one, do I have to? Yeah, I am. Okay. So I'll try to continue the section here on anxiety, depression, and psychoses. I'm having some technical difficulties here with YouTube and live stream uh, or StreamYard. So the connection between psychoses, bipolar, depression, anxiety, these severe conditions, and a ketogenic diet is often discovered by docs who recommend a ketogenic diet for weight loss for people with psychoses, and not even dreaming that it may help with their anxiety or bipolar depression. And when they see these like pretty dramatic, pretty rapid, quick responses, they they start thinking, maybe these things aren't so much Freudian or behavioral as much as brain energy issues. And um, it's not to say talk therapy and working on behavior changes and EMDR. There's a lot of great psychiatric psychological approaches, but here is this whole new way of conceptualizing psychoses as aberrant energy to the brain. Different parts of the brain rev up, different parts go down because they're not getting a nice steady stream of fuel, mostly because eating standard American diet, too many sweets, too many starches. And you can resolve this or improve it significantly by getting into ketosis. And much like seizures, it's known that seizures respond really well to a ketogenic diet. It's been known, for 100 years, or like scientifically proven for 100 years, that ketogenic diet is successful in treating most forms of seizures of epilepsy. But it's been known, like since Hippocrates' time, that fasting, which produces ketosis, was successful in treating seizures too. So there is a similarity between the psychoses, anxiety, depression, bipolar, and seizures. And I think, going back to neurodegenerative conditions, the same sort of thing. They're more seizure-like. It's like the brain isn't getting the fuel that it needs, and so because it's starving or short-circuiting, you get all of these kind of conditions. So thank you for joining me this evening. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm a novice at this. And I guess I'll end by showing you my shirt here. My food pyramid is a beef on the bottom, a pig in the middle, and a chicken on the top. So that's a way to get into ketosis. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again here soon.